If I were to ask you to picture an ancient civilization, Rome, Greece, Egypt, maybe even Carthage or Persia might come to mind. But there's a whole world of ancient languages that have seemingly been erased from history, one of them being Hurrian. But who were the Hurrians? Why do we know so little about them? And what was their language like? Spoken at the intersection of Iran, Iraq and Turkey, Hurrian was used from the last century of the 3rd millennium BC to the late 2nd millennium BC by the state of Mitanni. Due to the lack of written sources, for a long time the civilization of Mitanni and the Hurrian language remained forgotten. But upon discovering the Mitanni letter in Amarna, Egypt in 1887, and Bagazkoi archives at the site of Hattusha, the former Hittite capital, interest in the language was reignited. The Mitanni letter was part of the Amarna letters, an episode of diplomatic correspondence between ancient Egypt and its neighbours. This particular letter, the only one written in Hurrian, details the marriage between the Hurrian princess Tidu-Khipa to the Egyptian Amenhotep III. Okay, but what was the language like? Well, in terms of morphology, we know Hurrian was agglutinative, with some fusional elements, employing a large number of suffixes with modified stems. The language had OSV word order, although since Hurrian has ergative-absolutive alignment, instead of the nominative-accusative alignment that we're used to in English, this is often described as being more like goal, agent, action, and isn't really a hard and fast rule anyway. Hurrian exhibits suffix aufnahme, or case stacking, a formation which necessitates specific affixes in set positions in relation to the roots. Since this feature is shared with the Kartvelian languages of the Caucasus, some have argued for a connection, although at present this can't be proven. The root was often followed by a root extension, essentially a derivational suffix, as seen below with the causative, factative and reflexive/iterative, with it being frequent to observe vowel harmony in these chains. As for the morphology, most roots in Hurrian consisted of a single, unchanging syllable, with there also existing reduplicated roots. Added to this was a thematic vowel, either an I, E, or even A. In Hurrian, there existed the following cases: the absolutive, ergative, genitive, dative, directive, ablative, comitative, equative adverbial, equative, instrumental, locative instrumental, essive, and adverbial, which are summarized here. With Hurrian verbs, intransitive and transitive verbs are treated quite differently. While transitive verbs behave as you might expect, intransitives were treated as participles, and thus more like nouns. Therefore, because person was marked through inclusive pronouns, that is, pronouns not directly connected to a given word, the person marker could appear anywhere in the sentence. There were three tenses: the present, preterite, and future/imperfect, as well as an entirely different conjugation system for the negative forms. Unlike with the nouns, Hurrian utilized the slot system, where different suffixes had to go in set positions in relation to the roots. There were also non-indicative forms, like the voluntative, imperative, and jussive, although they're not yet fully understood. Most adjectives, apart from these ones, were formed through the addition of derivational suffixes like he, se, and ni, with a similar system being used for forming abstract nouns, numerals, suitability, ethnicities, and job titles. This was the phonology. Although something to note is that there wasn't really a distinction between voiced and unvoiced consonants, with short and long variations existing. And these were the vowels. So that you can get a real taste of the language, here's a short sample from the Mitanni letter. Like many civilizations in Mesopotamia at the time, the Hurrians used a modified system of cuneiform, which was more syllabic and used far less logograms than other forms of the writing system. And to a lesser extent, the language used the Ugaritic alphabetic script, an abjad with some syllabic elements. In the 13th century BC, crippled by both Hittite attacks from the north and the Assyrians at their southern border, the Hurrian state of Mitanni was eventually brought to its knees in 1200 BC by the Bronze Age collapse, after which the language gradually faded out. The exact date, though, is hard to pinpoint due to scarcity of sources. Anyway, that's it for this week. If you found this video informative, consider leaving a like, subscribing, and tune in for another episode next week.